Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about this A+ rated pollster, Marquette University, that released a poll from the state of Wisconsin, which really, first of all, shows a big lead for Kamala Harris. That's important in itself, but it also lays the groundwork for how Kamala Harris could really create something like this nationwide, how Kamala Harris could really win big still, even though this is a tremendously close race where either candidate could win the election. Obviously, the chances that each candidate win, they're very close. I think that Kamala Harris is favored, but Donald Trump could very well win. But it is possible, as revealed through this poll. We're going to get to everything, what it means, just for Wisconsin, then what it could mean for the rest of the nation. But it really demonstrates how, in fact, Kamala Harris could win this election by quite a lot of votes. So, as I said, in this new Marquette University poll, they are an A+ rated pollster. So if you're looking at a poll, you want it to be Marquette or one of the other A+ rated pollsters. It doesn't have the plus, but I assure you it is an A+ rated pollster. I don't know why they don't say it, but they are the best of the best, and they show Kamala Harris again with a 4-point lead in the state of Wisconsin. 4 points is big, of course. Wisconsin is a swing state, but Wisconsin only voted for Joe Biden by 0.6% in the 2020 election. This is the 2020 election map. Wisconsin was the third closest state in the 2020 election. Again, a 0.6% margin. So if Kamala Harris is gaining, 3.4% in Wisconsin, right? Went from 0.6 to, if this poll is accurate, 4.0, then she would be gaining 3.4% nationwide. Let's just call it 3.5% for the easy purposes. But that would mean, of course, traditionally, razor thin states like Georgia, Arizona, of course, Wisconsin, of course, would become lean states. These would be, 3 or 4 point margins for Kamala Harris, which is really stunning to see. Not only that, you'd have states like Nevada, which vote for Biden by 2.4%. If Harris is gaining 3.5 or 3.5, then she would be over a 5% margin, making a state like Nevada, as well as the state of Michigan, likely states. So they go from core battlegrounds to now likely states that we barely even have to talk about at all. And she's already over 270 electoral votes, and she wins the presidency. You've got Pennsylvania. They vote for Biden by 1.2. Harris would win it by 4.7%. That's a lean margin, almost a likely margin there. And then you've got North Carolina. Now, of these 7 core battleground states, North Carolina was the only one to vote for Donald Trump in the 2020 election, but it was by a very narrow margin. Kamala Harris would, as a result of this poll, gaining 3.4% in every state, carry North Carolina by a lean margin. That's a flip. Not only that, you've got 2 red states, Texas and Florida. Now, these wouldn't go to Kamala Harris just quite yet. Now, Texas certainly wouldn't. That's a lean margin still for Donald Trump. But if you look at Florida, if Kamala Harris is gaining 3.5%, then she would be, in fact, winning the state. Well, for, the fair purposes, she is technically gaining 3.4%. So she would exactly tie with Donald Trump in the state of Florida. So, if she wins that, then that's a pretty much an election blowout at 349 electoral votes to Donald Trump, J.D. Vance's 198. So if Kamala Harris did win Wisconsin by 4 points come election day, then we would be looking at a very different race than what we are looking at right now. This is my, if it loads here, this is my current election model. Don't mind the margins. I have to address the margins right now. But as for how each state is going, this is my current prediction right now. Arizona, Florida, Texas, all lean Republican. Georgia, tilt Republican. North Carolina and Wisconsin, tilt Democratic. And then Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, lean Democratic. So that's my current prediction right now, and that's a very close race. That's Harris with almost 300 electoral votes. Donald Trump, I don't know. I don't quite. It's like 292 or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter, though. The point is, a scenario where Kamala Harris is winning the state of Wisconsin by 4 points over Donald Trump, that would result in a very different election map than what this is. Again, I have Georgia, Arizona, Florida, and Texas going Republican. In this scenario, Kamala Harris is winning Georgia easily North Carolina. Easily. North Carolina by a bit. She's tying with Donald Trump in the state of Florida. Or one of them is winning it by a few thousand votes. So obviously, a 4-point margin would be absolutely tremendous for Kamala Harris in, such a battleground state like Wisconsin. Again, they only voted for Biden by 0.6. And the geography, really, of Wisconsin tells us a lot how Kamala Harris really could, in my mind, replicate this at a nationwide scale, considering if she does win it by 4 points. Because in Wisconsin, of course, you've got the biggest county in terms of population, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They vote for Biden by 39.9%. In 2016, they vote for Hillary Clinton by 39.7%. So it's shifting some 2.9% towards the left from 2016 to 2020. Sure, that's expected. That's that's almost in line with, how much the state as a whole shifted towards the left. That's not surprising at all. The urban areas, not really becoming too much more democratic from 2016 to 2020. But the areas that decide elections, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, and in Arizona primarily, those 4 states, are the suburbs. If you look at a county like Ozaukee County, these suburban counties are critical. These are the counties that decide elections, the suburbs. And what you'll notice, from 2016 to 2020, suburbs, and it's not just Wisconsin, this is Pennsylvania is even a better example, but considering that we're talking about this Wisconsin poll here, the suburbs really have turned away from Donald Trump. And again, this goes for not just Wisconsin, but all these other battleground states. In Ozaukee County, Donald Trump won it by 18.8% in the 2016 election. Let's call it 19%. 4 years later, he would go on to win it by 12. So he lost some 7 points in a county like Ozaukee, a suburban county outside of Milwaukee, right, while the state as a whole shifted about a point towards the left. So what you saw in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and in Georgia and in Arizona were the suburban areas trend the most towards the left in 2020. That's why Joe Biden won the election. It was because of the suburbs. As I pointed out, in, take urban areas, there wasn't all that much of a shift towards the Democrats from 2016 to 2020. And now, mind the rural areas too, where Joe Biden barely made any improvements. You can look at whatever, I don't know exactly which one to pull up. You can see here in Jackson County, Wisconsin, or I won't even try with that one, but Jackson County, Wisconsin, they voted for Trump by 11.7% in 2016, and while the nation as a whole and the state of Wisconsin became more Democratic, in 2020, Jackson County then voted for Trump by 15. From 2016 to 2020, Trump gained 4 points on the Democrats, which is really interesting to see, and that is a dynamic you saw. We were expecting Biden to do very well in the rural areas, but he failed to meet those expectations there. Where he didn't fail to meet expectations at all, he probably exceeded expectations, was the suburban counties, because they turned out in record numbers, and they voted overwhelmingly for the Democrats. I'll mind you, suburbs are traditionally Republican areas, right? They were big Mitt Romney fans. I'll just show Pennsylvania, for example, right? Traditional Republicans, they loved Mitt Romney. Chester County, Pennsylvania, voted for Romney by 0.2%. 8 years later in 2020, they'd gone to vote for Biden by 17. That is the Trump effect. While Trump does have massive appeal in white working class areas, that's how he won the election, right? Poorer, white, working class regions, especially among male voters. He made major losses in 2020 and 2016, surprisingly. But in both years, he had major losses among suburban voters, right? Because they're typically families, more family-oriented, and they have major problems with Donald Trump's character, and they can't bring themselves to vote for him. That is Donald Trump's suburban problem. And the point I'm trying to make when it relates to 2024 is that a Harris plus 4 margin in Wisconsin is possible. It's possible because Donald Trump is now such a different man than he was in 2020. He was unpopular in the suburbs in 2020, don't get me wrong, but since then, we have had the conviction. He is now a convicted criminal. You have had January 6th. you have had whatever all the lawsuits and everything that has to do with overturning or attempting to overturn the 2020 election. Heck, you've got the overturning of Roe. Now that's more policy centered rather than the other examples like character issues that suburbs would have a problem with. But still, it applies. Donald Trump is now a much weaker candidate than he ever has been in his political career in 2016 and 2020. I think that even in 2020 when he was at his low, he still had appeal in the suburbs, at least to some extent. And I believe that Donald Trump will certainly do worse in the suburbs after January 6th, after overturning of Roe, after his criminal conviction. I think that after all that, Donald Trump will suffer losses in the suburbs. Now, that I'm sure about, but it all matters by how much. Because if it is by a lot, then Kamala Harris can win Wisconsin by 4, and that just spells out disaster for Donald Trump nationwide. Again, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, primarily in those 4 states, suburbs dominate. Now, they're a huge part of the voter bloc in Michigan, in Nevada, North Carolina, and Florida, and Texas, and everything like that. But in those 4 states, which are critical battleground states, suburbs dominate the race. Joe Biden won Pennsylvania in 2020 because he ran up his numbers in the suburbs. They were the fastest trending, of the entire United States. When it comes to urban, suburban, or rural, by far and away, the region that, not region, but you know what I mean, out of those 3, the one that trended most towards the Democrats in 2020, by far and away, not even close, was the suburbs. If Kamala Harris can recreate that, if she can not only recreate that, but expand on it, then she wins the election easily, and she wins by a lot. So just a really interesting new poll, really says a lot about the 2024 election. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 20,000 subscribers before Election Day. So again, that would be very helpful. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.